Robert Frank was born in Switzerland. He took up photography to escape his family's business. He moved to New York to be a fashion photographer in 1947, but that only lasted for 2 years. Robert Frank was inspired by fellow Swiss photographer Jacob Tuckner. Jacob Tuckner was also a commercial photographer, but then moved over to fine art photography. Robert Frank was married to Mary Lockspear, who was an American artist. Her medium was painting. They had 2 children, Andrea and Pablo.
So Robert Frank, his equipment and process, let's just give a time, just a rough time of when he's, going around taking photos. This is like 1947 when he was in the U.S. So this is around Cold War, USSR, USA, red versus blue. You had the U.S., this when the sound barrier is broken. So then Roswell, New Mexico, the fun one. I like that one, the conspiracy one. But he had a Rolleiflex. He started with a Rolleiflex TLR. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but I really like this one. It looks weird. I haven't really seen a camera like this. It looks really old, but it looks kind of modern. But then later on he switches over to like a 3. I think I'm saying that right, but you can tell this one's more modern. It has that look everyone's accustomed to, the rectangular with the cylinder in the front. The classic little crank for the film. These babies took film rolls, and it's cool because you can use like experimental ways to take photos, like maybe the way you develop the film. You can alter the chemicals, get different things, but you always have a film negative. And the nice thing about these cameras is that you have when you're done developing, you have like a physical picture. There's something more about going through a drawer full of pictures than there is like a file full of pictures. You get to hold them and look at them. Robert Frank would like to stay incognito as much as he could to get like the raw feeling of a moment. Like just whip out the camera and take a real quick snap and run away. He wanted to get the moment. And that's how we do it, and I feel like it's a good way. Either that or have a camera no one can see. So, yeah, you just capture a moment, the feeling.
So Robert Frank's The Americans was a book that was published May 15th, 1958 in France, but later in 1959 it was published in America. And it's a collection of 83 photographs that were taken from all across the United States. So today these works are seen as kind of iconic and pinnacle, but at the time they were really harshly received. Today it's referred to as a fresh and unbiased commentary on American culture from an outsider's perspective. So Frank, who had previously worked in commercial photography, became disenchanted by kind of the lack of sincerity within the industry. So in 1955 he decided to move to the United States, where he received funding to start this journey across the country. So you can see in a lot of his works kind of this air of freedom, and that's a pushback to kind of his previous career that was more structured and had a lot less freedom. So for the 1959 American edition of this publication, there was a well-known poet and novelist named Jack Kerouac who wrote the introduction for this book, and his text is meant to complement the work that Frank did. Frank's work was quite revolutionary at the time because the common trend of photography in the United States was to depict it in a very wholesome light. Frank wanted to make sure that the simple corners of American life were not overlooked in his work. So he depicted a lot of things intentionally unglamorously, and he didn't stick to any of the traditional rules of photography at the time. So he did things like make things intentionally grainy, underexposed things. He had unconventional compositions and interesting framing and unorthodox focusing in order to tell a different story and have a different perspective. Many have even claimed that Frank's work ushered in the 1960s and 70s movement of street photography.
He would go around and take a bunch of pictures and then go through them later and be like, wow, these are really good photos. And that's why someone's asking him like, oh, did you know where to go when you took this photo? He's like, no, I just went around and was taking pictures of stuff that interested me. And this is how it came out. It's such a, nice shot with everyone framed inside the frame. You have what's going on at the time, the segregation of the trolley. This is New Orleans. And this was shot before the Rosa Parks movement. So I thought that was interesting because this is at the peak of what was going on before all that, before all this change is happening. Very meaningful. He's not really worried about the composition when he's taking the photos, because later on he's talking about how a good photo will come to you. You don't go looking for it, because if you go looking for it, it's going to be very, very staged. And he didn't like that because he wanted the natural, and this is just pure natural. It's just so nice. We only found out that this was a really good shot 2 months later when he had it all developed. And just a happy little accident. Take 1,000 shots every second, Didn't really think about impact of a picture because he wanted to capture, the essence of the place he was in, and the impact would come later when people look back at the time. And you can see next slide is my shot. I don't know. It was also taken in the moment, which I find really funny. I was with my brother and we're touring around London, just taking a bunch of photos. Why not? You're traveling. We were at my sister's wedding, taking a bus, and this is what I snapped on my way there. I think it's funny because there's no one on the bus, and this is all before the quarantine. No, there's no one on the bus anyways. But I think it's funny because even though I took it in the moment, there's still something to say about it. There's double-decker bus, really cool. I've never seen one of those before. I've never been on one. So, but then the other interesting thing is we're in London, and this poster is for LA's finest. It's just, I guess, in our way, just saying how far California culture and stuff can reach outside of the country, and I think that's really cool. I just think it makes me feel like, I don't know what people think of it, but I just think it's cool that you can go to another country and see your hometown still there. And I don't want to say it makes me prideful, but it kind of makes me feel like I'm glad to be part of something that's bigger than me.
The Robert Frank image I chose is entitled America 45. It was taken in South Carolina of an empty cafe. Oral Roberts is on TV, and the year was 1955. As an outsider looking in, Robert Frank saw America as a lonely and cold place, and that is what I see in this image. In this image, I get the cold feeling from the empty table in the middle of the room. It looks like nobody has touched it all day. My image is also of an empty restaurant. My friend photographed this image while he was riding his motorcycle during the coronavirus outbreak.
So there are a lot of images in this book that depict cars and roads, and they're used as motifs. So this is probably the most famous one, and it really demonstrates kind of the vastness and even the loneliness of the United States. So many people assumed that this photograph was taken at night due to the way that the light is. Even Kerouac in his introduction described it as a moonlit road, but it was actually made using a cinematic technique known as day for night. So Frank shot this during daylight, but he underexposed the negative, which in the end gave it an impression of a moonlit landscape. So I chose to depict kind of the loneliness and waste of infrastructure, but mine is through the lens of COVID-19 and how that's affected our society. So I applied the same technique of underexposing to make this photograph appear like it was captured at night and kind of look like the light that's seen is from the moon. To me, it's very interesting how rural America and urban America, the lines are becoming blurred as people aren't leaving their house as much. Cities are starting to feel a lot more lonely and look a lot less inhabited.